Hello everyone and welcome to my second guide. How do I finish a RPVE 10 map after getting to tier 4? In the previous guide I showed you how to get to your tier 3 pretty fast, pretty cheap, so on a budget. And this is the same, how do I finish the map with a budget, so with only cheap cards and also where I don't use 15 different cards, so like 4 or 5 cards should be enough. This guide will be relatively short, like 10-15 minutes. I will show you some different combinations of finishers and how they work. And yeah, let's get back straight into the game. So I prepared a few cards already in the deck. That's called RPV 10 Finish to show how you can do it. We gonna check from left to right. So first let's get over nature. So nature, your cheap finishers is a giant worm. One of the basic flying units, deals a lot of damage. Yeah, has a mediocre amount of HP, but it's okay because you play nature. And because you play nature, you can also play livestream. And livestream is a recently buffed T4 tower. Well, it's not a tower, it's a building that lets you set up a zone. And in this zone, your units only take 20% of the damage, as you can see here, as long as they stay in the zone. And 20% of the damage they took will also get transferred to the livestream as damage, so it gets damage over time. The zone stays here indefinitely. That's a word I can't really spell out, so it stays for a long time until your building absorbed 20,000 damage, or you just set up a new zone. How does it work? You can, for example, set up 2 overlapping zones. Only one will work, but if the first zone absorbed every damage it could, your second zone starts absorbing. And then we use Grimvines. We use Grimvines to tank, because they have like double the health, and they give us ground presence, so we can use our Oink spell, our Paralyze, or our Strangling Vines to CC your opponent. We will check this out by using like 10 Colossi and see, or 11, and see how it goes. Also, you can use your regrowth to heal up. Do they stay in the zone? Yeah, that's fine. So now the battle begins. And you see your units start taking damage, but it's only a little, and your buildings also start taking damage, which you can repair. Also, your buildings heal themselves by 60 HP, and you just saw the first zone got cancelled because your units took a lot of damage. Your second zone got cancelled, but you can just set it again as long as you have your cooldown is free. And you see we didn't lose any units. Now let's take a look at Frost. So in Frost you can use constructs for your main damage on ground. They have a long range of 40 meter. So artillery range, they deal bonus damage to buildings. And then you can use battleships to deal with air units, since constructs only shoot ground. And you use your Maelstrom or even a Cold Snap to crowd control your enemies and just watch them getting devastated. If you need a bit more damage, you can just use your barrage abilities from the battleships and just watch as everything gets killed. If your units start taking damage, you just use Walk of the North to reduce the damage they take by 50%. You see everything is fine. If you don't have battleships, because sometimes they're not in the market or really expensive, it depends, you can easily substitute them with Northland Drakes. Really good unit, it got buffed recently. It's a bit more expensive, but against XL units it deals more damage because it has a counter against XL, and it even has a damage ability which deals damage against frozen units, so making them really good to kill a lot of small stuff and to kill your air enemies. Good enough, more than good enough. Then let's take a look on Shadow. Shadow is a bit interesting because Shadow doesn't have a lot of cheap T4 units. Everything that you get on Shadow is expensive, even Overlords, which is also not the best unit because the stats are really weak and no XL counter. It heals itself, but the healing is not much. But Shadow got a little buff. Necrofuries got buffed. They are now full ranged units, so they can run and shoot. They don't have to go into siege mode to shoot anymore. If you go into siege mode, you just increase the range from 40 to 50 meter, and you gain the bone shot ability like in previous iterations. And to tank, you just use Southern Isles. If you have the leisure and the BFB, you can use both different affinities at the same time, because they summon different types of Snapjaws. These Snapjaws are getting buffed. As long as one Southern Isle lives, all Snapjaws get a buff of 200% damage, and they take less damage. And if you combine them, then your enemies get debuffed and take 50% more damage and deal 50% less damage. Let's take a look how it looks like. Like, I summon a lot, and then I just look how they get killed. If you are like you don't have a lot of Southern Isles, then you can use Frenetic Assault just to disable your enemies, so they start attacking each other. But even right now I don't think I will need this. I may lose 1 or 2 Southern Isles, but we killed like 10 Colossi for the cost of a bit more, and we didn't even use CC. And if you use Frenetic Assault, then basically you lose nothing. Also, if you don't like playing range, or you are stuck on tier 3 and can't get further, just make something that I call the Southern Isle army. So you basically summon a lot of Southern Isles. You use your ability, and these summoned units don't bind energy. The energy straight goes into your void, and even if you go over your unit limit and can't summon units, you can still use this ability to summon more Snapjaws. So right now we have like 8 Snapjaws of each type, because every Southern Isle summons 2. That's basically 2k HP with the buff. And now we just summon even more. You can do this until the game crashes or your graphic cards just melts down, because now we have like a lot. And then you're just gonna summon some enemies, and you can even use Frenetic Assault on tier 3. Look, the game is lagging really hard because it's a ton of animations. Like every Snapjaw has 6 animations and projectiles, and we have like 30 Snapjaws. But as you can see, your enemies just melt and die, and you don't really use. We lost 1 Snapjaw. That's everything that 10 Colossi could deal. And then you could use blood healing and on one of your Southern Isles, and then just heal all your units back to full. Okay, let's take a look at fire. Fire is pretty easy. You have your dragons to deal a ton of damage. Oh, the game is still lagging a bit. Can we reset this again so the game stops lagging? Okay, never mind. And then we use Batarials, Shadow Affinity. Shadow Affinity is cheap. They cost like 120, 150 on the market. What did I type wrong? 1T. So like 150, 180. It got a bit more expensive. If you don't have materials, you can substitute them with a Jarn. I will show you both versions. And the trick is, you summon your you go into the camp, you use Unity, you use Bloodthirst, and then you just show like your enemies melt down and your units just heal up back. As you can see, I lost nothing, everything is fine, and a lot of dead Colossi. I will restart the game, give me a second. Okay, I restarted the game, so now the game works fine. I guess my RAM was a bit on the weak side. So with a Jordan, since we have only one, we should use like one more dragon. But the good point about Jordan is he has a ton of HP, 7k. And it still serves the purpose of tanking damage. I'm sorry. Also, Jordan can destroy buildings pretty good, and he gives you ground presence for like Earthshaker or a Firebomb spell. Oh, I forgot a Bloodthirst, and as you can see, it's good enough to deal with this. You can also use Comet Catcher. They're a bit tricky to use because your comet takes about 11 till 12 seconds to land. So basically you use a cheap unit, maybe a Nomad, and then you run it against your enemy. Then you activate your Comet Catcher. You can set them to shortcuts, which only works in the game. So you can use shortcuts to get to them quickly. And you see then a lot of things die. I did a run with Comet Catcher finish. I will link it also in the description. I will link the whole playlist. Then you can check out the Frost deck and my fire finish. Honorable mention is a Ravenheart. If you need like a bit more air support, if you have constructs and maybe you lost your drakes, then Ravenheart is good. It can summon a few more ships, basically tanking damage and dealing a good amount of damage against air units and having a nice damage buff against X elements, and I think it even freezes. Yeah, as you can see, it just one hits a Colossi. Good card. And if you don't play a pure colors but start playing combinations, then your options are like endlessly. So if you play, for example, to nature and to fire orbs, you can play abominations for tanking and ground presence, which can disable melee units. They have a ton of health, they deal a ton of damage. You can combine Unity with Regrowth to heal back your units. You could also use like live streams also. Maybe you love dragons, so you play free fire and then you play one nature, so you can summon your dragon army, and then you use livestream, Unity and Regrowth to just push through your enemies without taking damage. And if you think that your healing's not enough with Regrowth, you can also use Bloodthirst, like in a pure fire list, and get more healing and more damage. So ton of options. You can even play Lost Souls without having the expensive Warlords, which you wanna use to tank. You can even use Lost Horrors to tank. Just summon use a Lost Evocation to summon a demon that gives your units a buff of 50% damage, and then you have your ships. And then you just use Frenetic Assault or Maelstrom to CC your enemies, and use Sword to reduce the damage you take. And as you can see, it's good enough to just clear it out. And ships are generally really mobile, so it works. I don't know, if you want to see more different combinations or you have questions, you're like, oh, I play 2 Shadow, 1 Fire, 1 Nature Orb, what is a good combination for me to use? You can ask me in the comments, I will give you a good answer. Also state if you want to have a budget answer or if you like, if you have enough BFP, because there are a lot of interesting options, like like a Bloodhorn. Um, you can use Unholy Hero, buff it up, back it up with Free Growth, and just activate Enrage, giving it even more damage, and then just watch it killing the whole base. Or you can even use Stampede during the activation. So lots of different options. Just ask, I will answer, and that's it for the guide. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.